At 7:15 a.m., the sun over Kuwait cast long shadows across the sand-colored walls of the forward operating base. The air buzzed with quiet movement. Generators hummed. Boots scuffed the gravel. And somewhere near the motor pool, someone was already shouting over the radio. Staff Sergeant Elena Ward walked the corridor outside admin, clipboard in hand, boots steady. Her uniform was regulation perfect, but her pace was unhurried, her expression unreadable. Inside the office, she processed morning reports without a word, reassignments, leave requests, readiness, status updates, nothing glamorous, nothing loud. She worked with the calm of someone who'd done this for years. A printer jammed. She fixed it. A junior specialist forgot how to submit a clearance packet. She walked him through it without irritation. To most, she was background, necessary, efficient, but forgettable. Just the admin lady. Pilots passed her in the hallway, with nods that barely registered. One of them, a young lieutenant named Kyle Mercer, had joked once in the DFAC that she probably couldn't tell an Apache from a lawnmower. She didn't react, didn't correct him, didn't mention that she wasn't even Army. He wouldn't have cared. Elena never explained herself. At 10:30 a.m., she stepped outside with a black notebook tucked under her arm and walked along the edge of the flight line. It wasn't part of her job. No one asked. She paused near the concrete barriers, where the heat shimmered above a row of parked Blackhawks and Cone 130 seconds. She stood silently, watching as a maintenance team checked a tail rotor, eyes tracking every movement. She didn't look like she belonged out there, but her gaze followed the work with more than curiosity. Back in her room later, she pulled up a training module on TACP comms protocol and replayed a simulation without sound. Her hand moved with practiced familiarity over the keyboard, entering coordinates faster than the tutorial could keep up. Most people only saw what was on the surface. A quiet woman in her late 30s, admin specialist, pencil pusher, background noise, in a base full of noise, but Elena Ward moved through that noise, like she'd learned long ago how to hear something else entirely, something underneath. She didn't speak of her past, and no one asked, which was fine. She wasn't here to be noticed. She was here to work, and she was very, very good at that. At 8:20 a.m., the base stirred in its usual rhythm. A convoy was being prepped near the south motor pool. The DFAC had eggs just a little too dry. Pilots reviewed briefings. Techs checked wiring on a grounded C-130. Music played low on someone's speaker, quickly silenced when a sergeant walked by. It was another hot, cloudless morning in Kuwait. Routine and familiar. Staff Sergeant Elena Ward was finishing up paperwork inside admin when the first impact hit. The explosion wasn't close enough to knock her down, but the vibration rolled through the floor like a wave. The lights flickered. 2 seconds later, the alarm blared across the compound. Incoming rocket. She didn't flinch. Outside, a rising column of black smoke curled above the west fuel yard. The blast radius had caught 3 soldiers off guard near the fence line. One was already down. The other 2 stunned and trying to drag him toward cover. Elena was out the door before anyone called for help. She crossed open ground with purpose, dropping beside the wounded soldier, checking his breathing. Pressing her hand into the gash on his leg, she called to the others, giving sharp, calm orders to stabilize the scene. Glove up, pressure here, keep his head low. Her voice cut through the noise. It wasn't panic, it was muscle memory. She secured a makeshift tourniquet using her belt and directed one of the privates to keep the airway open. When medics arrived seconds later, they paused, surprised to see her already mid-protocol. She didn't wait for thanks. She was moving again. Inside the Tactical Operations Center, chaos had taken hold. Radios squawked. A junior airman tried to sort through fragmented reports. The officer in charge was down with a shoulder injury, slumped in the corner, conscious but out of the fight. No one had taken charge. Elena stepped in. She moved quickly to the map display, scanning for known impact zones. She called out wind data, blast patterns, potential secondary hits. A tech sergeant hesitated. She wasn't command. She was just admin. But her presence was unshakable. She flagged a missing sector in the live feed and manually rerouted the input to restore eyes on the west perimeter. People moved. Orders were given. Structure returned. No one could say why she knew what to do. No one asked. But in the middle of the chaos, Elena Ward held the center. And for the first time that morning, things started to make sense again. By 9:50 a.m., the Tactical Operations Center was still thick with tension. The smoke outside had begun to drift west, but the threat wasn't over. Elena stood behind a half-lit console, eyes locked on a flickering data feed, showing movement beyond the perimeter. Something about the pattern didn't sit right. She leaned in, adjusted the screen manually, and rerouted the signal through a backup relay. The image cleared. A small cluster of heat signatures, not vehicles, not civilians. Without waiting, she pulled up the wind vector model and began calculating drift. A nearby comms operator glanced at her. Confused, he asked if she needed help. She didn't answer. Her hands moved fast, feeding coordinates into a manual overlay. She spoke softly, almost to herself, using terms most in the room hadn't heard since tech school. Terrain masking, pattern lock delay, low-profile vector lied. One of the junior sergeants looked over at another, brow furrowed. That's not admin speak. When the next report came through possible second wave, potential UAV threat, Elena didn't flinch. She ordered a channel shift, rerouted encrypted comms through the backup node, and confirmed cross-sector visual coverage. The room started to slow around her. People stopped barking over each other. They started listening. A young airman leaned in and whispered to the tech next to him. "Who is she?" Elena called out. Grid references before anyone requested them. Adjusted the tactical feed to compensate for time drift. Then pulled a line of coordinates from memory. Kyle Mercer, standing off to the side with a bandage across his wrist, finally stepped forward. "You're not just admin. Are you?" She didn't look up. Her voice stayed even. "Focus on coverage. We've got 10 minutes before another pass." No one pressed her. But the room was shifting. Eyes followed her now. Movement slowed when she entered their space. The center of gravity in the room had moved, and everyone felt it. It was Sergeant Ruiz who found the file. He hadn't meant to. He was trying to verify her clearance level when a folder popped up on the shared drive. It wasn't hidden. Just Kiet. Just like her, former rank captain. United States Air Force. Call sign Echo 7. Assigned Unit 74th Fighter Squadron. Moody AFB. Aircraft Adichie Thunderbolt Seconda. Combat Tours. 3. Commendations Medal for Valor. Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. Status: honorably discharged following injury sustained in combat. Shrapnel to left leg. Permanent limited duty. When Ruiz read it aloud, the room went still. Kyle didn't speak. He just stared at Elena like he'd seen her for the first time. She finally looked up, eyes meeting his. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was understanding, the kind that didn't need words. Someone in the back exhaled low. "That's why she knows. That's why she sees things we don't." Elena said nothing. She turned back to the screen and made a small correction to the incoming flight pattern. Then she keyed her mic and calmly gave the coordinates for the UAV diversion route. Nobody questioned her after that. By 10:45 a.m., the commanding officer was still unreachable. His last known transmission reported him en route to inspect the west sector fuel damage. Then silence. Radio dead. Backup lines intermittent. The operations center pulsed with noise reports. Scans. Hands moving fast across keyboards. But new direction. No clear command. Elena stood by the central monitor, headset slung low around her neck. The major was down with a concussion. The XO had been airlifted out with chest trauma. The base had officers. Yes, but none trained in real-time threat response. None with Combat Operations Command. People started looking at her. No one said it. Not yet. She stepped forward. Her voice was clear but firm. Patch me into TACP.net. Assign 2 for ground relay. Pull JTAC from Echo Tower. I want his eyes on the southern ridge. Now, there was a moment of hesitation. Then Kyle Mercer spoke from the back of the room. She's not even on the command roster. Elena didn't turn to him. Instead, she pointed to the satellite feed lagging in Sector 4. Recalibrate comms through the north relay and cut secondary encryption. You'll stabilize the sync in under 30 seconds. The tech sergeant ran the command. The screen cleared. Everyone saw it. Kyle didn't respond. But he didn't interrupt again either. Elena rolled her shoulders back, scanned the topographic overlay, then keyed into the TAC channel. This is Ward. Acting command. Be advised. Enemy movement has shifted west-northwest. Elevation 83 meters. Moving low across drainage. Recommend 2 teams reposition behind southern ridge. Prepare to pop smoke on visual. Do not engage until my mark. The room snapped into motion. Outside. The base perimeter was shifting. Guard units repositioned. Spotters locked in scopes. Elena coordinated with the JTAC at Echo Tower, verifying line of sight coverage. She ordered UAV feed overlaid onto ground radar, giving them a 3-dimensional picture of the terrain. When a comms tech asked how she knew the overlay shortcut, she didn't answer. Then came the second threat. An inbound UAV. Smaller than the first. Flying low. Heat signature. Masked by the fuel smoke. Almost invisible, until Elena caught a flicker on the southern radar arc. She didn't panic. It's not scanning, she said. It's targeting. Spoof the signal with base beacon B2. Run false telemetry west by 2 clicks. Pull wind drift data from 93 minutes ago and copy it into loopback. That'll give us 20 seconds to shift visual contact. The radar tech hesitated, but she was already doing it. Her fingers flew across the keys. Bypassing the normal interface, the feed jumped. On screen, the UAV veered slightly, unting false data. She turned to Kyle. You've got eyes. Confirm visual. He lifted his binos. Confirmed. It's biting. Elena keyed her mic again. TAC Alpha. This is Ward. Clear to mark. Smoke now. Seconds later, the real UAV passed over the marked position, an empty quadrant, and dropped. The payload detonated uselessly on scorched ground. Inside the TOC, no one spoke. The silence wasn't from fear. It was the weight of watching someone take control, like she was born for it. Kyle stepped closer. He looked tired, soaked in sweat, face tight. But there was no trace of doubt left in his voice. You flew 8 seconds. She didn't look away from the screen. Moody Air Force Base. 74th Fighter Squadron. 3 tours. He nodded slowly. The kind of nod that had nothing to do with rank or rules. She ran her hand down the screen. Eyes scanning the data one last time. We're not out of this yet. I want fire teams in Quadrant 6. Fall back ready. If they come again, we hold them there. Keep the tower hot and every relay synced. No second chances. Orders kept flying. Elena called for CASEVAC priorities. Checked fuel resupply coordination. Directed Blackhawks to sweep over suspected fallback zones. She did it all calmly. Precisely. Never shouting. Her voice moved through the headsets like a metronome. Steady in the noise. And the base followed. At 11:32 a.m., the last alert cleared. The threat passed. For now, Elena took off the headset, rolled her neck, and finally sat down. Kyle leaned against the table across from her, arms crossed. Ollie misused you, he said. She met his eyes. You weren't the only one. Neither of them smiled. There wasn't time for that, but the respect in the room was unmistakable. It didn't come from medals or files. It came from what they saw with their own eyes. In the middle of a firefight, a former pilot with a limp had stepped in and held the line, and no one doubted her now. At 2:30 p.m., the rotor wash kicked up a cloud of dust as the Black Hawk touched down near the TOC. Soldiers shielded their eyes. A senior Air Force officer stepped out on Get Steady. Flight suit, marked with command insignia, Colonel Davis. Those who knew the name stood a little straighter. He moved quickly across the lot, scanning the aftermath. Damaged barriers, scorched ground, medical tents still active. Then his eyes found Elena. He stopped. A flicker of disbelief crossed his face, followed by recognition. He stepped closer and called out to her, voice carrying over the hum of generators. Captain Ward, Echo 7, still saving lives. I see. Conversations around them stilled. A few heads turned. Then more. Kyle stood off to the side, arms crossed, the words catching in his chest. Elena didn't respond right away. She stood calmly, hands behind her back. Eyes steady. Colonel Davis stepped in front of her. You saved over 100 people today. Just like Kandahar. Just like always. Then he saluted her. No hesitation. No ceremony. Just respect. The silence broke, one by one. Soldiers followed. No orders, no speeches, just quiet nods and raised hands across the open yard. Kyle moved last. His salute wasn't polished, but it was honest. Elena returned the gesture with a soft nod. No smile, no speech. Just presence. The moment didn't need explaining. The woman they thought they knew, the quiet one in the admin office, had led them through the worst of it. And she'd done it without ever asking for the spotlight. It wasn't about rank anymore. It was about who showed up when it counted. And everyone knew exactly who that was now. At 5:40 p.m., the sun hovered low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the base. The worst of the day had passed. Soldiers moved slower now, quieter. Medics still worked under canvas shade, wrapping bandages, checking vitals. The smell of burnt fuel hung in the air, faint but lingering. Elena walked the edge of the flight line. Past the parked Black Hawk she'd helped stabilize earlier. A crew chief nodded to her. She returned it with a quiet thank you and bent to secure a loose strap on a fuel rig. No orders, no attention. Just small things, done right. As she passed the open lot near the TOC, an A-10 rumbled overhead, cutting a wide arc above the base. Her eyes followed it. That sound was still familiar. The low thunder of GAW 8 power, the shape of the wings, the steady roll of a pilot on station. She didn't feel longing, just memory. A part of her that would always belong to the sky. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind her. Kuwait stopped beside her. Arms folded, looking up at the same A-10. You didn't have to do any of this, he said. Elena glanced over, then back at the horizon. Maybe not, but I was here. He nodded, voice low. You kept this place standing. She didn't answer, just nodded once and kept walking. As the sky deepened into orange and purple, the base slowly returned to itself. The noise faded, the chaos settled. And Elena Ward, the woman once invisible to nearly everyone, left no speech, no ceremony, just the memory of how she stood in the middle of it all, calm and certain, when everything else was falling apart. Not loud, not commanding, but unforgettable.